peeling back the curtain on the true engine room of global finance. We often think of banks as the ultimate source of money, but have you ever stopped and wondered where banks themselves actually go when they need to borrow cash? Today, we are looking at the completely hidden market that literally keeps the entire global economy afloat, the interbank market.
To break this all down, we're going to hit 5 key areas: the hidden banking network, how banks trade cash, dominoes and popcorn, simulating the system, and finally, why this matters.
All right, part 1, the hidden banking network. We're peeling back the curtain on bank liquidity. Look, we usually picture banks as these giant static vaults just sitting on endless piles of cash, right? But the reality is way more dynamic. Just like you and me, banks face daily mismatches between what comes in, like deposits, and what goes out, like withdrawals or new loans. So the absolute crucial point here is that they use the interbank market to balance their books. It's an exclusive, wholesale financial network restricted entirely to banks and select institutions. It's essentially this private club where cash-rich banks lend their surplus out to cash-deficit banks just to make sure everything settles perfectly smoothly at the end of the day.
Now, they aren't exactly handing over duffel bags of cash to each other. They use very specific financial instruments for this. You've got call money, which is basically overnight funds that have to be repaid on demand. Then there's notice money, that's for slightly longer periods, say 2 to 14 days. We've got term money for interbank loans stretching anywhere over 14 days up to a year. And finally, the big one, repos. These are repurchase agreements, which is a form of collateralized borrowing. This just means a bank hands over incredibly safe assets, usually government securities, in exchange for the cash.
Moving to Section 2, how banks trade cash. The 2 main arteries of the system. So this hidden engine basically runs on 2 totally different types of fuel or arteries: unsecured and secured lending. Let's compare them real quick. Unsecured lending relies purely on trust. Bank A lends to Bank B without asking for any assets as backup. Because there's explicit counterparty risk, meaning the very real risk the other bank might just fail and stiff you, this type of lending naturally carries a higher interest rate. On the flip side, we've got secured or repo lending. This is backed by that safe collateral we just talked about. Because the lender holds that asset as a safety net, the risk is way lower, and therefore the interest rate is lower too.
What's absolutely fascinating is how market sentiment can completely flip the balance between these 2 arteries. Check out this data from around 2013, a time when banks were heavily scrutinizing their risk. We saw a massive 34% drop in unsecured trading volume. Meanwhile, secured repo markets grew by 17%. Banks were aggressively seeking the safety of collateral. Basically, trust was fading fast, so collateral became king.
Which brings us to Section 3, dominoes and popcorn. What happens when the engine seizes up?
So what actually happens when things go totally wrong in these 2 arteries? It leads to a pretty wild question explored by researchers at the European Central Bank. When a bank can't pay its debts, how does that damage actually spread through the rest of the financial system? The researchers came up with these brilliantly vivid metaphors to explain it. When the unsecured market fails, it triggers a domino effect. Think of it as direct contagion. Bank A owes Bank B. Bank B owes Bank C. If Bank A collapses, Bank B takes a direct hit, tips over, and knocks right into Bank C. But a secured market failure operates totally differently. It causes what they call a popcorn effect. Because secured lending relies on everyone trusting the exact same safe collateral, like government bonds, if the value of those specific bonds drops, it's a common factor shock. It basically heats up the entire pan at once, and multiple banks pop or fail simultaneously, completely independent of who directly owes who.
All right, Section 4, Simulating the System. We're looking at the ECB agent-based model.
To really grasp the mechanics of these complex shocks, economists don't just guess. They literally build entire virtual ecosystems. Take this incredible working paper from the European Central Bank, authored by Marcin Wolski and Michiel van der Leur. They used a novel agent-based model. Instead of just looking at the big macro trends, they programmed a virtual world of atomistic, individual banks, letting them trade and form networks endogenously just to see how they'd react to different risk scenarios. It's like a giant high-stakes simulation.
Now, to make sure this isn't just a video game, they program these virtual banks with strict real-world parameters. For instance, they gave the virtual banks a 6% target leverage ratio. That mirrors real-world macroprudential regulations, letting the researchers watch how these banks try to optimize their portfolios, juggling bonds, investments, and interbank lending while strictly coloring inside the regulatory lines.
And here's the really cool part. They can inject hard historical data points to stress test the system. They actually use the date August 9, 2007 as a dummy variable. Doing this lets them simulate the exact moment a massive crisis hits the market, and they just sit back and observe how the virtual banks react, who they lend to, and maybe more importantly, when they panic and stop lending altogether. The simulation spits out some genuinely amazing structural differences between our two main arteries when they are under stress. The unsecured market basically splinters. It has lower clustering and naturally breaks apart into these isolated islands of banks that are just too afraid to trade with outsiders. The secured market, though, it acts completely differently. It maintains higher clustering and keeps its total connections intact. Even more fascinating, the simulation shows the natural emergence of dealer banks in the secured space. These are highly central, trusted hubs that act as market makers, making sure the liquidity keeps flowing even when things get incredibly rocky.
And that leads us to our final part, Section 5, Why This Matters, taking it from invisible trades to the real economy.
You know, you might be wondering, why should I care about all these invisible, behind-the-scenes wholesale trades? Well, because this is the exact transmission path of monetary policy. When a central bank changes its policy rate to fight inflation, that decision doesn't just magically teleport to your local bank branch. It travels directly through the interbank market first. Interbank borrowing and lending rates respond immediately. Only after that happens do the lending and deposit rates change for everyday businesses and households. It's this hidden market that ultimately dictates the rate on your car loan or your mortgage.
Beyond just interest rates, a stable interbank market is absolutely crucial for keeping credit flowing to the real economy. Without an efficient network to share liquidity, banks would just hoard their cash, terrified they might face a sudden shortfall. And if banks hoard cash, vital credit stops flowing to the manufacturing, agriculture, and infrastructure sectors, the very things that literally keep our economy alive.
Ultimately, as this research highlights, a well-functioning secured market acts as a giant, vital shock absorber. By relying on collateral and those highly connected central hubs, it insulates the broader economy from sudden cash panics. It redistributes liquidity so that one isolated banking failure doesn't accidentally plunge the entire real economy into a deep freeze.
But I've got to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought here. We know the secured market is our shock absorber. It's what keeps the dominoes from falling. But if this entire secured market relies entirely on the perceived safety of collateral, like government bonds, what happens when that popcorn effect hits and the safe collateral itself suddenly loses value? How fragile is our modern financial architecture if the one thing everyone implicitly trusts suddenly becomes untrustworthy? It's a huge, critical question for the future of global finance. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you on the next one.